Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. This is webinar 3 as a part of our SAP BW Modernization webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Using SAP Tooling for a Smooth Transition. For those that have not attended one of our previous webinars, an introduction from my side might be helpful. My name is Justin Lynch. I work in SAP in North America as a part of the Max Attention COE, leading our SAP Datasphere team. Additionally, I am the topic owner in North America for our SAP Analytics Strategy Workshop portfolio. It's nice to meet you all, and I'm happy that you're here. In terms of our previous two sessions, we've had two very active sessions with a lot of great Q&A. Some questions were addressed during those sessions, and there are other questions that will either be addressed today or will be addressed in future sessions, so keep an eye out for your questions to be answered then. There may also be some questions that we look to cover in blogs or in follow-up sessions as well. So before we get into the tooling that will help with the smooth transition to SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge, let's recap a little bit of what we've talked about BW Bridge to set the stage for our upcoming discussion topic. So here on this slide, we recap what SAP BW Bridge is in terms of key capabilities and the value proposition. So it's important to remember that SAP BW Bridge is a feature of SAP Datasphere, and what this does is provides a path to the public cloud for our BW NetWeaver and SAP BW for HANA customers. By having this BW Bridge feature as a part of SAP Datasphere, we see some of the key capabilities and key value propositions that are listed on the screen. So items like connectivity and business content, working with those proven BW-based extractors to extract data from ECC or S4HANA into the BW system. Same concept works here with BW Bridge, where we extract that data from ECC or S4 via the extractors into the BW Bridge layer. When we look at enterprise-ready staging layers, that means working with BW features that we're used to, things like managing data loading with partitioning, how we're doing monitoring, error handling, etc. Also, tool support and move. So with BW Bridge, we can do a conversion, either shell or remote conversion. We'll talk more about what those are in an upcoming webinar. But know with BW Bridge, we have a tool support and move to help with moving objects and possibly data from the current BW system over to the BW Bridge. Now, in the previous webinar, we talked a lot about the prerequisites. Today, the intent is figuring out how ready your current BW system may be for BW Bridge. Just to touch on some of the key value propositions on this slide to make sure we're not leaving anything out. We're reusing with the business continuity. What does that mean? So many customers have had a BW system for many years. So there's been a lot of buildup of BW data structures, of transformations, customizations, and just the skills that the team has developed over the years. So by leveraging BW Bridge, you can utilize many of these BW things, whether it's the BW objects, the customizations, or the skills within your team. Furthermore, the extractors, as we were talking about, that semantic layer and familiarity with the connectivity to extract from a business suite system, we're able to continue to do that. Again, this ECC, S4HANA as examples will now point to the BW Bridge, and the data will be extracted from those sources into the BW Bridge system. Also innovating with cloud agility. So if we are leveraging BW Bridge, that means the BW Bridge is within SAP Datasphere. So while with a BW Bridge, we're talking mostly about bringing data into that BW Bridge layer, we now have SAP Datasphere where we can leverage all the features of that product in the work that we are doing in the environment for, think modeling requirements. On this slide, we look at the transition or migration paths in a little bit of a different context. So we talked about this briefly before, but just to recap, for customers that are on a release of NetWeaver BW less than 7.3, we would need them to upgrade to say 7.5 or BW4 HANA, but basically to one of the minimum versions. So in theory, it could be a 7.3, a 7.4, or a 7.5 within specific support packages. Now that would bring us to the middle box here on the screen where a customer would be on 7.3 to BW4 HANA. We see that the system in this case is on HANA, and we are looking to do a conversion from that current 7.3 or 7.4 or 7.5 or BW4 HANA 2021 over to the SAP Datasphere SAP BW bridge. So again, we use the tool supported move to be able to convert those objects over to BW bridge and bring the data depending on the conversion option that we do pick. So now we look at more of how is the process working during the conversion, but also look at how things will work once the conversion is completed. So let's first start with the conversion process. So you see this box here on the left that says SAP BW 7.3 and higher. So that is our starting point for the conversion process to BW bridge. You may hear this called the sender BW or the source BW or maybe other names, but no, this is your current BW landscape. Let's just call it the production system for this example. So during the conversion process, there are several prerequisites that are checked, similar to what we discussed in the previous webinar. But once all of those things are taken care of and we go through the conversion process, there are a series of pre-checks and things that are happening. Assuming we work through all of that, during the actual migration conversion, you see that the BW 7.x objects are picked up and they now reside in the BW bridge layer, and you see it's in what's called a BW4 object, this green colored box. The reason for this is the BW bridge BW is like a BW4, so if it's a 7.x system, those objects will be converted as they come over to the BW bridge. So at this point, we're talking about our objects. Our objects now reside in BW bridge. Again, our extractors, we would look to connect from our ECC S4, point them at BW bridge and be loading the data there. And we decommission that existing BW landscape because now we're loading data to BW bridge. Obviously, there may be a period of time while we're doing some comparisons, but long term, the intent is your current BW landscape would not be needed. Now, there's also the query layer that we will talk more about in upcoming webinars, but you see that parts of the query are now in different layers in the core Datasphere layer of SAP Datasphere and go into different types of artifacts. So there are some conversion capabilities there. There may be some rebuilding that we need to do. But again, more of that will be touched on during an upcoming webinar. But the takeaway here is we have the starting point of a previous BW system. We're moving the objects over. What we really need to figure out as a part of planning a conversion to SAP BW Bridge is how ready is a system to go to BW Bridge. For those that may have done a conversion from a current BW over to BW4 HANA, this process is similar. There are differences though. So one of the larger differences is SAP BW4 HANA system and an SAP BW Bridge, even though this slide makes it seem that it is a BW4 within the BW Bridge. That is not the case. So every feature we have in a NetWeaver BW or a BW4 HANA does not necessarily exist in BW Bridge. SAP Datasphere and SAP BW Bridge, it is a different product. So there are some differences that we need to be aware of. So it's important, once we complete the prerequisites that were discussed in the webinar previous to this one, and maybe even this is happening in parallel, is we're doing an evaluation of how ready is my current BW system for this conversion to SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. So that's what we're going to look to deep dive on. What are some ways that we can do that as at least as a starting point and discuss those opportunities further. So in order to determine how ready our current BW system is for SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge, I'm going to take you through two opportunities. The first one being this SAP Readiness Check, and the second one being what we call the Expert Evaluation. Now, these are to be starting points, these evaluations that we can do in parallel to some of the prerequisites and some of the planning phases of a conversion to SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. But remember, during the actual conversion, we will install the transfer cockpit, the pre-check, and we will be working with those tools as a part of the conversion. But the two tools that we'll discuss here are intended to help us from the beginning. So first one is this SAP Readiness Check for SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. So for those that may have tried this for BW for HANA, this is a very similar tool, just obviously the target output is focused at SAP Datasphere. When it comes to the SAP Readiness Check for SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge, what this is a self-service toolset that helps assess either your current BW 7.x or BW for HANA in terms of compatibility of source systems, in looking at how ready this BW system is for the SAP BW Bridge. So it will check things like overview of active SAP BW objects, the compatibility of SAP BW objects, the readiness of those connected source systems, different add-ons, and also the compatibility of custom code. There is a great blog here that details step by step. I'm going to give you a high-level summary here, but then there's also SAP Note 3352301, which is the central note for the SAP Readiness Check for SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. Now, for those on the call that may not be familiar with what the Readiness Check is, it works this way. So we install a series of data collectors on the BW system. So these are different ABAP-based data collectors that are then executed to go and collect information about the BW system in terms of what is in the bullet points here at the bottom left of the slide. So looking at the BW objects, looking at the source systems, looking at the add-ons, and also installing a custom code program to be able to do that check. We have an overall data collector that we then execute. It kicks off all these jobs to collect all the relevant information, and then packages it into a zip file that we then upload to the SAP Readiness Check website. What that website then does is pulls the information that we upload and gives us a graphic similar to what is here on the screen, where then we can drill down further on things like the object overview, the object compatibility, source system readiness, add-on readiness, and then some of the code scan outputs. So here on this slide, we take a little bit of a deeper look of how we execute these data collectors. So again, the data collection framework and the associated data collectors need to be installed. Those can be installed via SAP Notes in the Node Analyzer. You can leverage the XML files from SAP Note 2575059. But again, the overall central note 3329082 will also help you with all this information. So you go through the series of notes that need to be installed to get all the data collectors. Once these data collectors are now in the system, and for this we would recommend production to get the best viewpoint of this analysis. If there's a system copy available, that might be possible as well. But if not, we just have to be considerate of the fact that if we're not running this for production, to kind of take those results from a lower environment system with that viewpoint in mind. So when we run the data collectors, what happens is we need to prepare the custom code job. This is the rs underscore b4 HANA underscore log underscore display. So this report is typically triggered with the data collection framework. I myself always like to run this myself, so that then the data collection framework, once it runs, it just grabs my latest output. But we execute the report by going to SE38, typing in rc underscore collect underscore ANA underscore data. And then it brings up a screen similar to what is here on the right. So you see this transaction code or this program executed via SE38 has two transformation targets, one being BW4 HANA, one being SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. So why is it like this? So like I said earlier, we used to have just the BW4 HANA readiness check, and now we also have the readiness check for SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. To make it easier for our customers, instead of having multiple programs to run if they were doing an evaluation for both possible targets, it's all here in one program. So in our case, looking at SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge, we would select that radio button, and then we look at the scope selection. We want to make sure that code analysis, object analysis, and source system readiness are all there and checked so that we have a complete output. You might ask, why isn't this always done by default? Maybe you ran this and you're looking to check the status of some things after doing some optimization, cleanup, whatever it may be. Therefore, you might only run one of the scope selections. When we select these radio buttons, then we go to the top and click where it says schedule analysis and let that run. Important thing that I recommend is then going to SM37 after these jobs have kicked off and keep an eye on all of them running. You can also click the refresh execution status to see that it is still running, and ultimately you would see that the analysis is finished. And then from here, you can download the results into a zip file, save it locally, say on your desktop, and then that's what gets uploaded to the SAP Readiness Check website. So again, now that we've run the program, got the results, we need to upload them to the SAP Readiness Check website. Here it's listed, but also probably easier to just grab it from the SAP note. You click Start New Analysis, you give it a name, you upload your zip file, you make sure you review and acknowledge the terms of use and the disclaimer, and then click Create. It will take some time for the zip file to be uploaded to the readiness check page and the results to be broken out ultimately into the Fiori dashboard so that you have the results. So when I say it will take some time, it's usually less than half an hour. You will see that it says in preparation as a status, and then once completed, you will see available. Definitely recommend to refresh your browser to see the updated status. It will not happen automatically. Then once the analysis is available, you can open it to find an interactive dashboard where you can drill down and deep dive into the results. And for this, I will demo what is appropriate for how to better digest these results. One thing I also want to share, there is a way to get a document out of this, so you don't always have to go to the dashboard. You can have a local copy of the output as well. So just a little bit more information on the SAP Readiness Check. Again, this blog is really helpful to learn about the SAP Readiness Check information and how it all works. The central note 3352301 is the go-to place to learn more about the readiness check, all the associated data collectors and programs, and also helpful tips in running it. Again, there is also a note that will point to both the BW4 and Datasphere readiness check, but we can execute from the same program the readiness check for each. When we look at the help.sap.com for the readiness check, you will see that there is now a no link for the SAP Datasphere SAP BW Bridge Readiness Check. So also more information of everything that we've touched on today about running the Readiness Check. So in addition to the SAP Readiness Check, which, as I stated before, is more of a self-service opportunity where customers can follow this process and get the results, we also offer what we call the SAP Expert Evaluation Service for SAP Datasphere SAP BW Bridge. This is something that my team here in the Max Attention COE in North America has developed, and we've been delivering this service to various customers to help them on their journey and better understand what the process will look like to get to SAP Datasphere SAP BW Bridge. So let me give you a little bit of context of this expert evaluation service and what is involved. So when the business scenario or problem statement is that customers will have a BW system and it's unclear on what is required to move to Datasphere, especially when looking at the BW Bridge feature. It's often very much a manual process and a very detailed process that go object by object or data flow by data flow. So our team here has developed this tool service, as we call it, to help with this analysis and evaluate the readiness for our customers. So what we do is get a connection to our customer's production BW system. Again, like with the readiness check, production gives us the best viewpoint of evaluating the readiness. What we will do is run some scripts to collect BW metadata and statistical data from the system. So again, we're not looking at the transactional data, we're just looking at object-related data and then statistical information about those objects. We also may check some objects in the system based on what we see in some of our initial scripts. What we do with the scripts and the results is perform a detailed analysis to do that evaluation of the readiness for SAP Datasphere SAP BW Bridge. The output then is in a few different formats. We build out a report that we will ultimately share in PDF format to share all of our relevant findings, next steps, recommendations. So what does this mean? This means we're taking a look at the objects that are currently utilized in your production BW system and checking a few things. First, for all the objects, are they all being used? And what I mean by that is in the last, say, year or two, how many of the objects in the system are being used? Is it the case that you're using 90% of the system all the time? Or is it the case that maybe you're only using 50 or 55%? That helps give an understanding of what may be required to move to SAP BW Bridge and what maybe isn't necessary to move. Also, we're looking to understand the different types of objects in the system, and from those objects, we determine compatibility for the SAP BW Bridge and what is involved in that process. When it comes to looking at the conversion, as we'll talk about in a little bit, some things are automatically taken care of as a part of the conversion. Some things are semi-automated and some things require a manual intervention. There may also be features that you're using in BW that just do not exist in the BW Bridge, and maybe it's something you need to kind of rebuild, redesign. So again, back to the output, we share all these findings, we detail the next steps, recommendations, talk about conversion options as well. We share that in more of a presentation and do a readout to the customer, but additionally, we share in Excel format all the data that we pulled from the system. So what were the different advanced DSOs? What were the different BEX objects? What were the different multi-providers, composite providers? Detailing how many are existing in the system in active form, how many are used, say, within a year or two, and then what is the supportability of that given object, and we detail SAP notes for more information about those ones, especially that may not be compatible. So to kind of close and talk about the value and benefits of this expert evaluation tool. So the intent is to provide a clear understanding of the current usage of BW objects in the production BW system. We're explaining what objects are and are not supported for SAP BW Bridge, and where possible, what steps can be done to help with the not supported objects. We provide best practices in terms of prerequisites, things to think of for the conversion, etc. And then we give, again, all the detailed information about all the objects and what we found from your environment. So this slide offers us a bit of a different viewpoint on the expert evaluation. Some points we already discussed and some new points. So when it comes to the overview of BW objects, we are looking at the supportability, both in terms of with BW Bridge, but also in a viewpoint of the transfer migration tool. We are providing more information around those non-supported objects, especially, and what possible paths may be to make those objects supported, whether it's before or after the conversion, and any SAP notes and or documents that may be helpful with that process. And we're providing those statistics on utilized objects. Now, when it comes to the output of each object and the subtypes, we are looking at the utilization, the number of objects, the dependencies. We are looking at supportability of objects, the transfer type, whether it's, again, automated, semi-automated, manual. We're looking at relevant SAP notes. This may be more of FYI kind of SAP notes, or it may be more related to the simplification list. You will see in some of the output that we leverage SAP for some visualization to make some nice summary dashboards. I find this to be helpful, especially when explaining how ready a system is for BW Bridge to, say, some upper management colleagues. And then again, the Excel output is helpful for those hands-on and technical colleagues that want to see line by line, object by object. So a lot of different types of outputs that we give. Again, this all gets summarized into a PowerPoint presentation that we would deliver in a readout session with the customer. But then also that is, delivered as a PDF, and then the Excel outputs would be shared as well. So this is more on the expert evaluation. One thing I do want to mention in terms of being able to share or show an example. Unfortunately, at this time, I don't have a standard template or something that I could share, because each of these outputs is very much catered towards our customers and what's in their systems. But just to kind of summarize what is in a report, I will be showing that in the coming or later part of this session. So now that we better understand the tooling options, or at least two of the options that we have from the SAP side, I think it's important to also understand what are we evaluating so that you can better digest the results. So let's spend a few minutes better understanding some of the non-compatibility, especially objects or items that we're looking into. So this slide here shows the conversion paths to SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge for various different object types that would exist in your current BW system. We did talk about this in webinar 1 at a high level, and I plan to kind of recap and cover these same items here just to make sure that we have a better understanding of what the tooling that we're looking at is checking. So let's first talk about the first line, the BEX Analyzer, BEX Web Templates, BEX Tools. Those things do not exist in SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. So you see this is a manual conversion, meaning these things are rebuilt as consumable objects in SAP Analytics Cloud. So what does that mean? When we do a conversion to BW Bridge and we bring over the objects and or data, we will then need to rebuild what was in the BEX layer now into SAC, for example. When we look at the BW query, formerly in BEX Query Designer, you see this is a semi-automated transition, meaning that for this kind of query, we'll leverage parts of the model transfer to help with bringing our query over to SAP Datasphere. So as I talked about before, We bring our data, we bring our objects into BW Bridge, but our query level is going to be residing now in the core Datasphere layer. So that's why you see semi-automated. We may be able to use the tooling that is available to us for the query conversion, but there are some restrictions and features that need to be there for this model transfer to be able to be leveraged. For our classic object types, things like info cubes, DSOs, multi-providers, those do not exist in SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge. We're now leveraging advanced DSOs and composite providers, so the tool helps us with that conversion, as well as the object type info object. Now it's still an info object in the BW Bridge, so that the tool helps with that conversion as well. When we look at our loading object types, things like transformations, DTPs, process chains, all the really important loading steps to us, the tool also helps with that, where the transformations are still transformations, the DTPs are still DTPs, the process chain is now a BW Bridge process chain, but the tool will help us with that conversion process. Now that SAP GUI modeling and workbench, if you think of RSA1 and many of those other RS transactions that you would have leveraged in a NetWeaver BW or a BW for HANA system, those do not exist in the BW Bridge. So what we have to look to leverage is things like BW modeling tools through Eclipse, and also the BW Bridge cockpit, which is based on UI5, to be able to do much of that work that we would have previously done through the SAP GUI. So it's just a change in the process of where you're accessing these things, but you'll see that many of the features are similar, the similar look and feel. Again, it's just a different place that we're doing these things, but the tool helps to make sure during the conversion that these objects are now available where they need to be. When we look at source system ERP extractors, our SAP extractors, those get consolidated to ODP. That is also through the conversion tool. There may be some prerequisites in terms of the extractors to make sure they can be ODP, so we need to enable them for ODP. And there is a process and flag that needs to be checked for standard extractors, if not already done, and also for your custom extractors. When we look at source system types like UD or DB Connect, data services, etc., that is a manual shift because those will point to the core Datasphere layer. So we now need to set up the connectivity for those objects to the core Datasphere, and we would look to load them into a space that then we also give access to the BW Bridge space so we can combine artifacts. Similar concept here for the source system types of HANA and file. And then for PSA info packages, the conversion tool helps with that process, where we'll now see things as ODQ, operational delta Q, and then maybe field-based advanced DSOs as well. For our content, we list this as semi-automated because there is BW Bridge content for the different more BW Bridge type of objects. So that we'll see some variations to maybe the standard BI content packages that we're used to. So depending how it's been changed, that's why we see semi-automated. And then the bottom line here is about things like nearline storage, the cold tier. There is a new cold store that is in the roadmap. So for that reason, you see this listed as manual. So this is a great summary of the different variations between a current NetWeaver BW and in some cases BW for HANA to what changes with the SAP BW Bridge. So now that we have a better understanding of the SAP tools that are available to evaluate how ready a current BW system is for SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge, and also now an understanding of what those tools are evaluating and looking for, now I want to talk about how you can engage to get our support from our services teams. So this slide here is our services portfolio. You see this is for overall cloud analytics, but my focus here will be on the Datasphere. This is for our consulting professional services groups. So you see that they offer different services for the explore, discover, design, deliver, run, and scale, offering various opportunities to support our customers in their journeys with SAP Datasphere. So things like strategic advisory services for analytics, especially in some of that, you could see use cases such as the expert evaluation. They also offer enablement services. These enablement services help customers prepare themselves for a successful deployment of SAP Datasphere by learning the ins and outs of SAP Datasphere, along with the prerequisites, the modeling, the connectivity, the integration with, say, reporting tools, etc. So they're really enabling our customers to better understand how the product works, and that helps with, the discover and design phases especially. The quick start for SAP Datasphere. This helps companies quickly build a business data fabric that harmonizes the data sources throughout the landscape. So think of this as a way that we can come in and support you in kind of that quick start. So this maybe could be POC, proof of concept, or maybe a pilot or prototype, type of use cases, but it could also be getting you going on your implementation as well. And then there are different value adoption services. So if we need to pull in different areas to support the project. So as you see, there are things for HANA Cloud. There are things for SAC with the tight integration that those products have with Datasphere. We definitely recommend utilizing services in those areas as well. And on the max attention side, we also call this premium engagements. We offer services from the advisory level, the enablement level, and quick start and implementation. So the analytics and data management vision is basically the expert evaluation service that we spoke about earlier today, where we are doing that evaluation on your current BW system with some scripts and then providing the compatibility information, but also statistics and that PowerPoint, PDF, readout, and then all the Excel data. For analytics strategy workshop, the point here is to look at not just Datasphere and the data warehousing layer, but also opportunities such as operational reporting through S4 embedded analytics, different reporting tools like SAP Analytics Cloud or SAP Business Objects or SAP Analysis for Office. We would also look at data management topics and technologies. We would discuss, if applicable, the SAC planning and SAP S4HANA group reporting. All of these are possible scope items for an SAP Analytics Strategy Workshop service. Under the enablement, we have an Analytics Design Workshop. So if a customer needs help with getting going in Datasphere, such as how should I set up my spaces? How should I handle security at a space level or a row level security? What are best practices or things I should be doing in my models? And how do I build things such as in the analytic model to prepare for the reporting layer? This could also be a review of what you are doing in the Datasphere system to make sure things are within best practices and we can provide any guidance there. The enablement workshop is basically a series of show and tell sessions, from an overview of Datasphere to the connectivity to be able to bring data in, to the modeling of that data in Datasphere, and then also preparing it for the consumption layer, for example, SAC. So this is a lot of learning to give our customers a better understanding of all the features, how to set up Datasphere, how to best utilize it, and how to work within our best practices. The Jumpstart is a term that basically describes we help on POCs, prototypes, and pilots. So come up with a use case for this proof of concept, and we can be there to support a customer through that process. So in case any questions come up, in case any questions around the process or the steps or how to build things, we are able to support. Design at scale is very similar, other than it's focusing on the implementation phase, where a customer is working on that transition to SAP Datasphere. And then safeguarding and transition to operations. This is our typical safeguarding package where we could do health checks, assessments of the environment, performance optimization services, volume stress test type of services, and also go live support for when those users are first on the system and maybe through a hypercare. All the things that I described on this slide are applicable in most cases for both BW Bridge and also the core Datasphere. And again, this is the premium engagement, so this would be for customers that have max attention, maybe active attention. It is also possible to work with some of the service account executives and put together what we call a value assurance contract, which is smaller compared to a max attention contract, but would be able to have a package of these services to help a customer through their SAP Datasphere project. So given that we talked about the expert evaluation and that fits into our vision workshop, I wanted to make sure we're touching on other service opportunities, both for max attention premium engagement customers, but also from the consulting services side as well, as I mentioned on the previous slide. As discussed earlier with the expert evaluation, I don't have a sample report that I can show because all reports contain confidential data from previous deliveries and executions. And with removing all of that, basically leaves a bare template. So what I want to do is at least spend a few minutes talking about what is in the report to give everyone a better perspective of that. So when it comes to the report, we provide what you see on the slide here. This is a high-level summary. So first, we start the report with a summary. What is the background of the customer situation? What are the unsupported objects, features, so things that jumped out at us as will definitely need attention. We look to call those out in the summary, and then what we recommend in terms of next steps. We share customer solution landscape information from the current BW landscape and also maybe what a future viewpoint would be. The importance with the solution landscape is looking at sources to that current BW system, then also where the data is going out of the BW system. Things like reporting tools, for example. Then we get into the BW Bridge overview and conversion options. So this is information about how BW Bridge works, what are the conversion options, and what are the prerequisites. A lot of what is here are things that I talked about either today or in the previous webinars. Where a lot of the key findings are in this SAP Datasphere Expert Evaluation findings. So this is where we're calling things out like a showstopper, or technical considerations or high effort objects. We're trying to be transparent here, showing that what the findings in the system are. So what are things that are definitely not compatible, things you need to fix, take care of, all of these things we're looking to call out. Then we do a breakdown by different categories of a BW system. So source system information, data warehousing, the data staging, the analytical manager, front-end tools, and planning if applicable. So in all of these cases, we're looking to do a breakdown on the objects. This is a similar output to what you would see in the Excel, except in this report, it's much more detailed in terms of the findings. So we're kind of showing what the findings are, and then you can correlate that to the object by object within the Excel. So in the expert evaluation findings, again, we're calling out everything that we found from what's supported to what's not supported to what is used often to what is not used as often. And then the appendix would be any other relevant information based on the findings. So this is kind of the format of the expert evaluation report. I hope it gives a better context to what is included as an output. So again, this would be the report, the readout that we would first present to the customer and then share as an output. And then along with those Excel outputs would be shared and gone over as well. So also I mentioned about SAC dashboards. Those would be here in the summary slides as well. To really show, maybe upper management, what is the current status of the system in a kind of a graphical, easy to digest dashboard format. So this is a little bit of an overview of what the expert evaluation report entails and what's there. And if there are any questions, you could certainly reach out to me as well.
All right, let's take a look at an example SAP Datasphere, SAP BW Bridge Readiness Check output. So when you would upload that zip file, again, it will take some time for the results to be available, but once it is available and you click the link, you would land in this landing page here, where then you can find all the information about your execution. So just a few things to point out before we go into the details. You can see that you can favorite this. You could download the results. By downloading the results, what this does is it gives you a Word document version of this output. You could update the analysis if something changed and you wanted to, adjust this execution. You could definitely do that here. Also, in that same scenario, you could just do another upload and have a different, output for the results that you could look at. You can refresh. You can look at technical properties. You could look at the analysis history. So if you are, doing things like changing things, here we just see that my colleague Bill had created this one. And then on the learn more, you get a lot of different information about this readiness check and the output. So things like next steps, what are you supposed to do with this? How do you better understand it? In terms of general information and an overview of what each of these tabs are, from object overview, object compatibility, source system readiness, add-ons, and custom code compatibility. What are each of these? What are the purpose? I'll be kind of taking you through that, so I won't spend the time to read that here. And then remarks about maybe more on further thinking with the readiness check. So looking at things like the shell conversion guide, the remote conversion runbook, as two examples, more about the SAP note that gives you more information, etc. So I want to point out that these things are here for your help. But let's jump into each of these and learn how to navigate this readiness check. So if anybody has worked on a readiness check in the past, you may know that the look and feel is a little bit different here. That's because we're now working on the SAP for Me platform, but overall it works relatively the same. So again, we go to this landing page. We have an object overview, object compatibility, source system readiness, add-ons, custom code compatibility. Let's go one by one and just see, what is included in each. So when it comes to the object overview, here we're providing statistics and an overview based on these 5 areas within a BW system, from analytic manager to data staging to data warehousing, front-end tools, and planning. So you can see as I mouse over, it kind of highlights that area here on this chart. But if we were to click in, now what we can do is see data by data by data. So in this scenario, this is a smaller test system that this analysis was run on. So, the statistics in your system, I would expect, are significantly larger. But nevertheless, this gives you an idea of the look and feel. So, what we have is by each of those 5 areas, the key types of objects that are used, what type of transfer type it would be to go to the BW bridge, on the BW bridge, or maybe this is a Datasphere object, not a BW bridge object in the target scenario. It lists out what this is. We look at number of active objects, and then we looked at recently used objects. So you see in my scenario, there's not much usage here in this environment. But we have the analytical manager, we have the data staging, which are a lot of our modeling objects. You can see all the counts. You can see what the target object would be. In the data warehousing level, more of the modeling objects. Again, it's telling you what the object is, how it's handled. I'll just kind of scroll through here so you can even see the front end side, looking at the BEX objects mostly, but some other, types of objects as well. And then on the planning execution statistics on the bottom here as well. Like on the landing page, there is a learn more button, and it'll show you, an explanation about this specific, tile that we're in for the output. If we go back to the dashboard, close my learn more, I now click on my object compatibility. You see it's sorted by convertible, adjustment required, or non-convertible. Similar to, is this a manual? Is this automatically converted with the conversion tool, or is it semi-automated? Just a little bit of a different verbiage here. So again, we have our chart at the top and we click in, and then what this lists out is all the objects, and it gives us a bit of a different viewpoint here where we're looking at before transfer, during transfer, after transfer. You see that now all of these 16,000 plus objects in this system here are listed out. What we have is the T logo object, the object name, what category does this fall into, what if a subcategory is applicable, and then what is the detailed finding. So you see a lot of the objects here in this system involve BPC, and this is not supported with BW Bridge through the BPC for HANA add-on. But we could just keep scrolling through here. I'm just going to keep scrolling until I find another scenario to show you. It looks like there's a lot of BPC, so let's see if we can find a different example. Here we go. So in this scenario, now we have 8,000 objects that are handled during the conversion. It's pointing at aggregates, for example, which will be skipped during the transfer because those are no longer needed. We see things about APDs. We see things about BEX objects and how they're handled. When applicable, there's a corresponding SAP note as well. So this is what we can see from the object compatibility screen. And again, I can click the after transfer and see, if there were any related findings there. So let's go back to the dashboard. We go to source system readiness. Now on the source system readiness, again, this is going to point out all of my BW source systems. So those are not BW as the source system, but the source systems that are feeding data to the current BW. What this is going to point out all those source systems. If there's some kind of release information that will be here, the status will be here, what type of source system it is, a comment on that source system, and then an applicable SAP note. So you can see in my source system here, we had a lot of files, a lot of DB connects, so a lot of the messaging is the same, but you see, about ODP comments, etc. So I would say similar layout for what you may see in your environment, but because this was an internal system, we don't exactly have, ECCs and S4s as much pointing and being used. Here is an example of an S4 system, and it's saying this SAP source system type no longer supported. You see that we're going to be leveraging ODP to bring that data over. In my add-ons, if I had add-on example or add-ons in a long list, you would see more here, but in this scenario, there are just a few of the add-ons. I haven't been calling this out page by page, but you see add-ons are not available with Datasphere BW Bridge, so this little learn more is really helpful for knowing how to better digest the output. So, for example, this doesn't say not supported, not supported, not supported for every add-on because that would be a bit of a redundant, but, that is the key takeaway here. And then we go to our custom code check. Within our custom code check, you see that we have it filtered by area and also by type. And what you would do is navigate through toggling through each of these. So transformations, we see a lot of these different objects. We see what development package it's in, its technical name, the description, what kind of transformation is it, what's the rating, and the message. So, seeing a lot of things that are forbidden objects. So we would need to, look into those and see what they are and how they're used. But this is a quick, walk through an example. Again, this was a internal system with, not exactly all the objects you would see compared to what your BW system is. And you see some things didn't necessarily have data or didn't load the data because it wasn't there. But hopefully this gives you a good walkthrough of how the readiness check works and at least how you can grab all the information. Hopefully you notice in each of these, most times we can download to an Excel, but one thing to call out when you do this generate document, not only does it generate all this in a Word document format, it also downloads Excels with all this data as well. So that's a quick walkthrough of the SAP Readiness Check output.
Thank you. My name is Amar Naji. I am part of the solution management team covering SAP Datasphere. And in today's section, I will cover additional assessment tools from our SAP partners. So the agenda for our content today will be based on 3 partners. The first one is CPAR Consultancy. The second one is Interdobs, and the third is Sierra Digital. So let's go ahead and start with the CPARC. CPARC consultancy tools have been developed to optimize the transformation process from SAP BW to either SAP BW 4 or SAP Datasphere. The tools will help answer many questions related to the time required for a migration project and the costs associated with such a project. The BW discovery tools, for example, DCOM4 and TunnelSphere, will help determine what is used and not used in a BW system and what existing SAP BW functionality is supported or not supported on the latest features available in SAP BW4 and SAP Datasphere. CPARC Consultancy has also developed a BW decommissioning discovery tool called D2, as you can see on the slide. This tool helps highlight the SAP BW objects that could be potentially decommissioned from your SAP BW system. Finally, another time-consuming aspect that CPARC Consultancy thought of is related to the BW transformation testing part. CPARC Consultancy has developed 2 automated testing tools, Val4 and Val4 3.x, to help reduce the overall migration costs related to the testing. As you can see, CPARC Consultancy has several tools to help you optimize your BW migration process. And also, for more information, we have a link at the bottom that can help you learn more and dive deeper into the tool. Our second partner is Interdobs. Interdobs has introduced the Interdobs BW Bridge Optimizer tool. Also, Interdobs has been involved in many BW implementations and BW migration projects, including migrations to SAP Datasphere. They provide an innovative approach to support with the migrations to SAP Datasphere, including BW Bridge. Interdobs provides a selective migration approach instead of a blanket approach, where they focus on the data and objects that truly matter to your environment, ensuring an efficient migration process to the cloud. They bring together the Interdobs Bridge Cockpit with the SAP Readiness Check to provide deep and actionable insight to answer questions about active queries or untouched data in your BW system. Their analysis also identifies everything from empty objects to dormant data, including lookups embedded in various routines. Interdobs leverages SAP tooling to ensure a smooth migration experience and journey to SAP Datasphere. Please take a look at the deep dive webinar that is listed at the bottom of the slide. Our next tool comes from an SAP partner that's based in the Houston area in Texas. The name is Sierra Digital. Sierra Digital is an SAP partner with expertise in SAP BW and SAP Business Technology Platform technology. Sierra Digital initiated the BW assessment tool to guide clients on their transformation of their BW systems to SAP Datasphere. Sierra has simplified the consumption of their assessment tool into 3 simple steps. The first step is connect, where the tool employs a straightforward process commencing with the establishment of a connection to the DP agent server, where they work closely with the customer to set up the required RFC connections into the BW systems. The second step is analyze, where subsequently the Sierra tool proceeds to extract and analyze the BW metadata to generate a comprehensive BW assessment report that is accessible via either the SAP Analytics Cloud technology or an SAP Fiori UI5 application. This report provides insights into the inventory of both standard and custom BW objects. It also conducts a usage analysis based on historical frequency and aids in prioritizing the most frequently used and relevant artifacts for the conversion process. The third step, planning step, with these reports, customers can effectively chart a path forward, a conversion plan, to guide them on their BW to Datasphere transformation journey. So before we let you go, we just wanted to call out a few call to actions where we would love for you to take a look at some of the content that we have for you to assist you in your process. There's a great blog that we link to here that gives you a deep dive and details into the readiness check. Also, we included a link to the central note, so to help you prepare for the use of the readiness check, and also a link to the documentation as well to give you more in-depth insight into the readiness check. So overall, just to get you prepared, to give you insight into your systems, leveraging the readiness check as you prepare for activating or engaging with a partner, for example, or with SAP to take the next steps with regard to the assessment of your BW environment. So this brings us to the end of session 3, using SAP tooling for a smooth transition and covering SAP partner tooling as well. Our next session will be session 4, where we talk about the sizing and to give you insight into the how to, for example, look at the sizing and what to consider. The next session will be on October 11th. We look forward to seeing you there, and we thank you for your time and your attendance.